We want that email to add so much value to Bob that he looks out for it every single month, right? So it has to be geared specifically to Bob. Hello and welcome to season 3 of the New School podcast. This is episode number 2. I'm Candace, head of strategy at Ficom. So in this episode, I'm going to cover client communication. And you may think that's odd, but it's such low-hanging fruit and such an opportunity that isn't leveraged by most firms to drive deeper connection with your existing clients, to nurture prospects, to figure out your content game overall from a marketing perspective, but also to really accelerate client and COI referrals and expand wallet share. So in this episode, I'm going to take you through step by step what we're seeing so you don't feel alone, what's common, 2, what you can do to step up your game, and then 3, how to take it with an inside out approach to master your content game externally. So what does that mean? How do we move from client communications to prospect communications to driving more leads? Remember that these frameworks are relevant whether you're a firm that's sub 500 million in AUM all the way to firms that are 20 billion plus, because that is the makeup of our clients. That's who we work with. So we use these with our clients and we've seen them work. So if you missed episode 1 of this season's podcast, it's all about how to move through a growth plateau. So you can go back and listen to that episode. 2 key things. You've got to have a documented strategy and an ideal client persona based in reality of your best client, who we called Bob. If you're intrigued by who Bob is, you can go back and listen to that episode. All right, so let's get started. Why are we talking about client communications? Well, client communications is your tool to scale yourself in between your client, prospect, and COI meetings. So I put all of those groups on your client communications. Think about client communications as an additional touch point that allows you to stay in front of your clients so that they feel like they've seen you more than they have in person or on Zoom. And also you're adding value to their life in between meetings. So when we think about client communications, we think about a couple of different touch points. I think most people would think about client emails. So we'll kind of start there. Social media is also a client communication touch point. Although you may not think it is, your clients are on social media. And so them seeing posts from you or comments from you, that's a client communication touch point. And then third, any original content that you're creating, whether it be a YouTube series or a podcast, that is also client communications, because guess what? Your clients are consuming content and on their phones, whether they're watching YouTube or podcast. And if it's coming from you and they're a client, that's additional touch point. So think about client communications as not just your email, but all of these additional touch points and ways that you can be in front of your clients. So I'm going to start with client email because I think that's a place where a lot of firms are doing something, and maybe it's a monthly email. And I'm going to cover, first of all, what we typically see, how to accelerate, optimize, and step up your game. And then third of all, how to take it externally for your social media, and then measure success. All right. So the first thing that we see typically is, as I mentioned, monthly email. It's got a market update, a financial planning topic, maybe a photo from your team, and then maybe some level of personalization. So it's got a recipe or a book recommendation, which is cool. I think the issue that we see with most of these, though, is if we lined up 10 emails from financial firms, no matter what their size is, whether they have a strong corporate marketing function or they just have someone doing it part-time off the side of their desk, if we were to look at them all in a row, it would be hard for us to really identify or distinguish how you're different from another firm. Why is that? Because generally the information is geared for what we consider a financial planning or wealth management type client. There's very little personality because it feels like a one-to-many communication. It might come from the brand, so the name of your company or firm. And so there's no personality, there's no specificity. And as an end client, quite frankly, if we're talking about client communications, I might not get a lot of value from it. Also because there's too much, there's too many ideas. So think about your email, when you're going through all your inboxes, there's a whole bunch of stuff in one email, you just skim through it. So that's kind of like the state of affairs. Cool. Not bad. You're doing it, but let's take it to the next level. So here are things to step up your game. Number one, you want to make sure that your client communications are coming from a person and not your firm. So I've seen in some of the big firms, they may have the same client communication, but there's some level of personalization. So it comes from their advisor. So there's a picture, their name, it comes from them. So think about when you receive an email, when it comes from a person, you look out for the name, you look out for it and you respond, versus if it comes from a company, it feels a little bit generic. There's no level of personalization. So one, make sure that it comes from a person. So you could be a big firm, maybe it comes from your CEO, maybe depending on the month, it comes from different people. So maybe it's a CIO, then the CEO, then the head of financial planning. If you're a smaller firm, it should ideally come from the advisor that they're working with, right? So really clear. Two, you want it to be high value. So how is it high value? Usually by focusing on one idea and going quite deep into it. And then it should be geared to your target client, your best client. So in our previous episode, we called it Bob. So if you missed that, think about if we were to segment your client base and we looked at the top 10% of clients, and then we now pulled out one client that represented that top 10%, we want that email to add so much value to Bob that he looks out for it every single month, right? So it has to be geared specifically to Bob. So here's some ideas that I came up with for myself. So if it was coming to me from my financial advisor and I felt like my financial advisor understood me, it might be a topic like planning your vacation at boutique hotels that deliver coffee to your door. Very specific type of person, right? And I'm not saying that's the subject line to the email, but that's the idea. It could be still feel like you're missing a crypto train. Here's what to really know. Or it could be for Bob, it could be like how to really support inheritance in a way that makes it you maintain integrity and relationships with all of your children, like maybe something like that. I don't know, right? So really specific. You want to focus on quality over quantity. In an ideal scenario, you've actually asked your best clients like, Bob, how often do you want to hear from me? And what do you want to hear about? And then you've got some sense to go on. You also want to make sure that you offer them a way to connect with you more and deeper. So simple, it could be reply back if you have any questions or you want to dive deeper into this topic, or if you want to talk, you might have your Calendly link there and say, always open to additional conversations. Would love to hear from you if you want to schedule some time. Okay. So if you want to up your game, make sure it comes from one person. You're speaking to one person. So the vibe, the tone should be in that one-to-one. And it should specifically be talking to one of your best clients that represents the top 10% of your clients, right? Your target client. You want to do quality over quantity and then offer them a way to connect with you deeper. Some bonus points, you might add in a personal element like a video. So you might do like the email, and it might be a video from you talking about what was in the email, or it might be an intro to what's going on in life and explaining what's going to be in the email, right? Video, amazing tool. If you know your clients like to listen to audio, maybe it's an audio overview. Okay. So that's a really, really good way. When you think about the fact that we talked about client communications, our emails, social media, and your content, we're going to talk about applying your inside out mindset. So I would recommend that these client communications be consistent, but that you make sure that you put your COIs on them. So your COIs get a sense of who you're speaking to, the value that you add to clients, you're top of mind in between your meetings with them. And it's an active strategy so that if someone comes into their office who looks like someone who would like your email content, they're like, oh, got to send this person over to you. They would be an amazing fit. All right. So when we're thinking about your emails and your content there, and if it's hyper targeted, it's focused, you're offering them a place to connect with you, you want to take that same content and publish it in places where more Bobs hang out, or other places where your best clients hang out, because that's an additional touch point. So thinking about that email could be snippets for your social media profile. So on LinkedIn, the video that you created to personalize it could go on Instagram. It could also go on YouTube if that was relevant, or maybe you had a longer version of the explanation on YouTube. And you want to distribute it in places where your best client Bob hangs out, because more people like him will be that and be there. And if you've tailored it specifically for Bob and now you're distributing it in places where other Bobs are hanging out, you all of a sudden have created super targeted prospect communications, and you've put them in places where Bobs of the world hang out. Okay, so really think about that. So if you think about your client communication as your email, maybe your video or something, you could take that after you send it to your clients, You could create a blog for it that could go on your website. Now it's fueling your SEO. If future Bobs of the world come to your website and they're self-selecting in, they could read it, get some value. You could have snippets of that go to your social media profile. So if I'm an end client and I'm Bob, I might have seen the email but not read it, but then I see the social clip and I'm like, oh, yes, amazing, good value. Or I might be searching for a financial advisor or trying to look up something on YouTube and I come across your video or Instagram, whatever that looks like. Okay. So all of a sudden, from focusing on your client communication, your email, you've created all this other content. You're just distributing it in different places. Okay. So all of a sudden, you're mastering your external marketing game. And it just starts from client communication. This is the power of your ongoing client communication. So now let's talk about success. What does success look like? Success initially may look like clients responding to the email and saying, I love this. Success looks like clients coming into meetings and saying, I love what you've been sending out. It could be clients commenting on the posts on social media. It could be your COIs mentioning the communications. All of this is really, really valuable. It's indicators that it's the right type of content, that it's focused, and it's high value. What you want to think about is starting to notice client referrals, COI referrals, and expanded wallet share opportunities that come from that content. So when we think about expanded wallet share opportunities, you might be educating them about additional resources or topics that they're interested in, and then they realize they should take advantage of them. Or it could be because you're deepening engagement and connection with them so much, they're like, oh my gosh, I've got to speak to X, my advisor, about this thing, right? Or they might have something that's all of a sudden really easy to forward to someone. This is the power and the role of your client communication. But remember at the top, I introduced a radical idea. I said, these client communications, put your clients on, put your prospects on them. Don't overcomplicate it, right? Unless there's specific things that are only related to clients, even in that case, like 90% of that email should be able to go to prospects, and then add your COI. So with your prospects, put them on your client communications if they haven't converted yet. And then just add value, educate, make an offer to them twice a year. For your COIs, put them on it so they can feel part of your practice. They can understand what you're doing with end clients, the value that you offer, and stay top of mind. Okay, so think about client communications as a vehicle for you to figure out your content game, drive deeper connection, accelerate referrals, but most importantly, scale yourself. So that was a lot. I bet you didn't expect to hear so much on client communications. I hope it was wildly helpful. Every episode in the season, I'm going to give you frameworks and one-to-one guidance on how to accelerate organic growth in your firm using real-life frameworks that we use with our clients. If you want to find out and hear examples of how other firms thought about building and driving organic growth in their business, you can check out our Growth Leaders of Wealth Management podcast. It's hosted by our CEO, Meg Carpenter. If you love this episode, I would love to hear from you. Feel free to subscribe, rate a review. I love having you around. Thanks for having me and for being here.